Hey, what's up? It is Monday, and it's going to be the first club of the year for Young Life in Redmond this year, which is exciting. Well, not this year. I mean, 2020. It's the first club of 2020, which is crazy. I thought in 2020 there'd be like flying car. I think there's this old cartoon called the Jetsons. I'm pretty sure it took place in 2020, and I remember as a little kid just saying, "Man, I can't wait till 2000s. We're gonna have flying cars. We're gonna be able to teleport." And none of that stuff is happening. But regardless, it's 2020, and tonight we're gonna have a thrift shop club where kids go in teams to a thrift shop close to this restaurant, close to Panda Express here in town, and they're gonna like have a $20 to see who can come up with the best outfit for someone. Then we're gonna do a fashion show in Panda Express, and then I'm gonna give this talk, and the talk's gonna be the story of Jesus healing this guy with withered hand. So, anyways, first off, though, I gotta tell a story about just kind of being in over my head one time. It happened like shoot, like 10 years ago or so. We were leading a small group at church, and I was talking to a couple of our friends about how I loved mountain biking, and I was probably, if I'm honest, talking about like saying I was probably better than I really was at mountain biking. Anyways, long story short, their son was really into mountain biking, and they were like, "Hey, why don't you take our son out mountain biking, or he's gonna go this tomorrow morning. You want to go with him?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, fine, whatever." So I go over there to go mountain biking with their son, and quickly realized that I was in way over my head. Turns out their son like didn't just enjoy mountain biking, but was like semi-pro and sponsored downhill racer in mountain biking, and the guys that he was going with were all like in the same category. So I was like in way over my head because I was not that good at, like, not even a little bit that good. Like I could ride a bike on a trail. So the day goes on, and I'm like, I honestly can't even tell you. I don't remember what happens. I just remember parking at the trailhead. I kind of remember getting my bike out of the truck. And then the next thing I remember is driving to the hospital. So apparently I wiped out, knocked myself out, and I ended up breaking this collarbone right here. I've broken this one too last year, about a year ago, but this was a while ago. I broke this collarbone. And at the time, my job, was I was a valet driver, and using both my arms to help people get luggage. I worked at a hotel, at the Ritz Carlton Hotel in Dana Point, and so like to get luggage out cars, you need to be able to lift stuff. And my job was very physical. I was running for cars, and with a broken collarbone, I couldn't do that. And I just remember the financial strain that I had on my family. Candace and I were married at the time, and Hazel was like not even 1 year old. But like Candace wasn't really working, and everything was coming in off my salary, and I couldn't work for like a month. And that just put a huge strain. And it was a really, like, it was unfortunate. Having that injury it was painful, and it was like debilitating, but it was also just like it meant that I couldn't work like I should, and it was hard to make money for my family, and it was a hard time. Back in Jesus' day, though, if you had a disability or something like that, it was much worse. Like you were basically like you were almost just like a burden for somebody. Like you could not, like, it was a very like agricultural time, and so things required you to like use your body to work to make money. And there's a story where we find this guy. It happens on a Sabbath day, which on the Sabbath day back then, it was like the seventh day of the week, and it was a day of the week that was supposed to be used just for rest. You weren't supposed to work. You were supposed to just rest and be with the people that you loved. And honestly, the whole point of the Sabbath was to rest and to love people and to love God and to just enjoy this like oneness with God and creation and other people. but it had gotten turned into something totally different, full of rules. I mean, the amount of rules, like there were rules about whether or not you could like open your door, or how heavy of a load could you carry, like on your back, like a burden. I mean, it got crazy to where the rules were almost more work. Like it was more work to keep the rules than to actually just rest. And so, anyways, it had just gotten way out of hand. And so Jesus is in the synagogue, which would have been like their local church, on the Sabbath day. And there's Jesus, there's a group of Pharisees. Now the Pharisees were like the religious elite of that time. They were like pastors and teachers, and like sort of like you know how now there's like the super Christians, or like the people who kind of whatever, for whatever reason, think it's their responsibility to make sure everyone else is like being a good Christian. Or I mean, honestly, like I would probably be considered a Pharisee maybe back then, although they were for the most part fairly wealthy, and that's not my case. Well, kind of compared to the rest of the world, I'm pretty wealthy probably. But anyways, that's like they sort of took it upon themselves to be like morally responsible for other people. So they would put all these rules on people to make sure that they were following like God's way. And then so there's Jesus is in the synagogue. There's these Pharisees in the synagogue, these uber religious people, and then there's a man there, and it says this was a man with a shriveled hand. And so what this probably meant was that his hand was basically useless. Like I remember at the church I grew up at, there was a guy, he was like a really big guy, but one of his arms and hands was like super small and literally like shriveled up, like he had to carry it like this. And it was just sort of like, it just sort of hung there, and he couldn't use it. It was totally like he couldn't use it. You've probably seen people like that. There's still a lot of people like that today. It's like a disformity. Some people are born that way, and they did nothing to do, nothing. They had nothing to do with it. It just, that's how they were born, and that's how life is for them. So there was this man there, and remember back then, that would have meant like he wasn't living a full life. Like he was not able to engage in like life the way it was supposed to be. He was probably like, people had to help him a lot, and he might have been a huge financial burden on his family, or people who cared about him. But he was in the synagogue, and it says, some of them, this being the Pharisees, were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. So they're like, they don't like Jesus because Jesus is going around and healing people. He's not following their rules, but he's claiming to be like a servant of God. He's claiming to be super close to God. He is leading people toward what he called the kingdom of God. What he said like was the whole point of following God. And it looked different than their rules. It was different than what they did, and they did not like it at all. It was a little bit out of control, and they hated that. They wanted control. But honestly, at the same time, Pharisees kind of get a bad rap, but they were just trying to do the right thing. They were literally just trying. I mean, I think most of them really were trying to please God, but they just got things wrong. So it says there's some Pharisees, and they're wanting to accuse you. They're already wanting to like call Jesus' bluff, like point a finger and be like, got you. Like we knew you were like a bad dude or whatever, a rebel. And so they watched him closely to see if he would heal this guy with the shriveled hand on the Sabbath, because Jesus had already been healing people all over the place. So they knew like Jesus could heal this guy, but it was a Sabbath, so you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. Like that would be breaking their rules. So they wanted to trap Jesus. And Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, hey, so Jesus like knows what's going on, and tells the guy with the shriveled hand, like, hey, stand up, get in front. He wants him to get in front of everyone. Jesus isn't scared. Like, he doesn't go up to the guy and like, hey, like, I see you and I want to heal you, but here's my business card. Call me tomorrow and we'll set up something, because these guys are going to get super pissed off if I say anything. No, he like tells this man, get up in front of everyone. Jesus doesn't care. Then Jesus asks these Pharisees, like he knows what's going on. Jesus knows what's going on. And he asks these Pharisees, what's lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save a life or to kill it, or to kill? But the Pharisees remain silent. They're like stunned. Jesus is like, what? Hey, what can I do here? Is it like, should I save a life or kill it? Is it lawful to do good or evil? And you might be thinking like, well, they're not, like, there's no evil. Who's doing evil? Like, but just wait, it gets better. He looked around at them and he got super angry and distressed at their stubborn hearts. So Jesus is he's like fuming, because these are the people that are supposed to be leading everyone towards God. These are the people that are supposed to be showing what it's like to live trusting and believing in God. These are the people that are supposed to be helping others get to God, and they're not. They're getting distracted by rules, they're getting distracted by traditions, they're getting distracted by all sorts of other things. And so Jesus is getting so upset. You'll find, like, if you read the Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, the accounts of Jesus, like, the people that he gets mad at are the religious leaders of that time. He doesn't get mad at like the super bad people or the sinners, or like nowadays I feel like it's sort of, I mean, I don't know how much has changed, but it's like you hear the church yelling at, or parts of the church yelling at people who are gay, or yelling at people who are like sleeping around, like sexual purity, or doing drugs, or whatever. Like still, I feel like the church likes to get mad at people for moral failure, or like point our finger and yell at people who are not even interested in church at all anyways. But Jesus never ever did that. Like he was never really angry at people outside of what we would call the church. He was, I mean, it wasn't called church back then, but he was really, his most angry words and stuff were towards the religious leaders of the time, not people outside of religion. People outside of religion, man, Jesus just loved them and accepted them and welcomed them in and spent time with them and loved them. And so here he's just getting angry because the Pharisees are kind of doing exactly, they're like actually keeping people from God. And so he says to the man, stretch out your hand. And as this man, remember, his hand was probably like this, as he was able to stretch it out. And I can't imagine what that felt like this dude being like, whoa, and like feeling, like moving his fingers for the first time and feeling strength for the first time in the hand, and being able to like pick something up, or like this guy must have just known, like, holy cow, what the heck just happened? Like, this is amazing. My shriveled hand and arm are now like fully functional and restored. It says he stretched out his hand, was completely restored. Not only his hand, but this dude's life was completely restored. Like, this dude's whole life is now restored. Then the Pharisees, this is where it's like this good and evil thing. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot. Like, they began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. So the Herodians are this political group that were they're pretty powerful people, and they worked for Rome, and they were fans of the like puppet king, this guy named Herod, and they were a political organization. And so you have these religious leaders now aligning themselves with this political organization and plotting to kill Jesus. Jesus did good on the Sabbath. He healed this man, and then these religious people began plotting evil on the Sabbath. It's ironic. Like, they were saying Jesus couldn't heal his man on the Sabbath. They're so upset at Jesus for doing good on the Sabbath that they begin to do evil on the Sabbath. Like that, like, don't let that irony like get lost here. The people that were supposed to be the most loving people are filled with hate. They're so wrapped up in their rules that they can't see past their own noses. They can't see that the whole point of God's blessings, the whole point of walking with God, of following and obeying God, is loving others and loving this world and bringing about restoration. That was what we see Jesus doing all the time. Jesus is God. Jesus was fully God and fully human. And when he was here, he befriended the very worst kinds of people. He hung out with prostitutes and sex workers and party people and people working for corrupt businesses. He kind of sought out the people on the outside. He touched people with like the unclean, the people you weren't supposed to touch. Jesus would touch them and heal them, and he sought them out and would just restore life. That's what he did. That's what Jesus was about, was restoring life where there was death. And then you see these Pharisees and the religious leaders of the time, they're just caught up in their rules and their tradition and their way and doing it their way. And if you're not with them, then you're against them. And if you're not with them, then they're against you. That is not what Jesus was about. So as I wrap this up, here's the point, guys. Maybe you identify with this man with the shriveled hand, and you're like, just not living a full life right now. You're feeling like something's keeping you from full life. Well, like, Jesus is the way to a full, real, true life. And he wants to enter into your experience and heal you and restore you. And you know those parts of you that you feel so icky and gross? Jesus wants to just touch those and like wipe it all away and bring life. Maybe you're like, I don't want anything to do with Jesus because it's all a bunch of rules and it's all a bunch of what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And what I see most of the time when I look at like Christians, like, I want no part of it. And I just want to say, man, like, it's not a lot different today than it was back then. There are a lot of us Jesus followers that are kind of just, we've gotten confused, and we've began to make rules more important than people. We've begun to make like doing it our way the most important thing, and that's just not the way. That's not how Jesus rolled. Not ever. Jesus always went to people on the outside, and he loved them. And so if you're like, I don't want to have any part to do with Jesus because like it's just a bunch of rules and regulations and things I have to do and things I can't do, I just want to encourage, like, that's not. There's things that we can do to like experience Jesus more, and it will actually just bring more life. But like, the point of everything is love. The point of everything is loving Jesus, loving yourself, loving other people like you love yourself, just harmony and things the way that they were made to be. And that's really only possible with Jesus. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Maybe you are already a Jesus follower and you struggle with this idea of like not liking other people because they, whatever, fill in the blank, they're gay, or they have sex with people, or they do drugs, or whatever. And you carry with you this, like, a lot of judgment. Man, I like, please begin to ask Jesus to take that away. Begin to like think that that might not be how Jesus is, because it's not how he is in the Bible at all. And so tonight, wherever you are, I just encourage you to like allow Jesus to enter into your experience, to not be so judgmental that you miss him, to not be so afraid of judgmental people that you miss him. But allow him to actually, to like that, the thought that he might actually love you the way you are right now, and might have a plan for your life that includes loving others and inviting other people into real life. Like, that might be true. There are some of you here in the room right now, that some of you watching this thing, that, man, God has so much life for you and life to give to others through you. And those things are completely entwined. I just hope that you don't miss Jesus for the rules and regulations and all that kind of stuff, that you get to see Jesus is all about restoring life to full. All right, that's all I have for you guys tonight. I hope you have a great night.